Good morning, everyone, and welcome to another episode of the Market Snapshot series. My name is Rufas Kamau, Markets Analyst at FX Pesa. So feel welcome, and this will be an interesting session as we look at what we are expecting over the week, look at the key price action levels that were formed last week, and potentially identify trading opportunities for the day and also for the week. So before we make any progress, I would like to begin with a mic test. So if you can hear me clearly, kindly type hi on the live comment section, and these will confirm that everything is working just fine. So hey, Philip, I can see Kazadi and Malombe in the house. Thank you guys. Thank you for joining and for your responses. Let's get things started. So today, the markets began with some very early news that is from the Bank of Japan. So the Bank of Japan Governor Kazuo Ueda had a speech early in the morning where he identified some volatility in the wage growth trends, where on one side, they're expecting wage to be recovering, and once they achieve a strong wage growth, then in that case, the Bank of Japan may now begin considering tightening policy, but that has not happened yet, and that remains a key hindrance that has led to the current weakness in the Japanese yen. So later on at 11 a.m., that's just before I started this session, we had the German IFO business climate data coming in at 85.7, which is way higher than the expectation, but the same exact level as the previous reading. So going ahead for the day, we'll be having the CBA realized sales for the UK. ECB President Lagarde is set to issue a speech at 4 p.m. Then Belgian MBB business climate data at 4 p.m. So clearly, a very quiet Monday, which basically means that it's a price action traders territory without expecting any news in the market. So as we head into Tuesday, the major news will be the Bank of Japan core CPI. So it's a measure of inflation without the volatile food and energy prices. It's considered as a more accurate measure of inflation because it shows the overall movement of prices without really focusing on the volatile assets, which tend to sway the overhead data. So later on, we'll be looking at the CB consumer confidence in the US, new home sales, Richmond manufacturing index, as well as a speech from FOMC member Bauman on Tuesday. Wednesday, we have the Australian inflation data. For US, we'll be looking at the core durable goods orders as well as durable goods orders data. Before we listen to a speech from SNB Chairman Jordan at 7:45 p.m. on Wednesday. There will also be US crude oil inventories. So going into Thursday, we'll be looking at German preliminary CPI, Spanish flash CPI, and then later on, we look at the final GDP quarter over quarter for the US and of course, the weekly unemployment claims. So another speech from FOMC member Goolsbee, FOMC member Cook, that's still on Thursday, before we get the headline speech from Fed Chair Powell at 11 p.m. on Thursday. So as we head to the last day of the week, we'll be looking at the Tokyo core CPI, unemployment rate in Japan, preliminary industrial production, as well as retail sales in Japan. We will be having a bank holiday in China on Friday all day. Then as we approach the end of the day, we'll be having the Canadian GDP, and of course, the Fed's favorite measure of inflation, which is the core PCE price index month over month. Goods trade balance, personal income, personal spending, as well as preliminary wholesale inventories for the US. Then preliminary University of Michigan consumer sentiment, as well as inflation expectation survey. So there will be an extra data point for China, which will be happening on Saturday. And this is a manufacturing PMI, as well as non-manufacturing PMI. So as you all know, whenever there's a key data announcement happening on Saturdays, it tends to lead to gaps, especially if there's a big surprise. So we could be seeing a big gap in the market as the market opens on Monday next week. And remember, next week is when we have the non-farm payrolls for the US. So every first Friday of the month, as we all know, basically leads to the announcement of the US jobs data, otherwise known as the non-farm payrolls. So knowing that, if you look at the breaking news, we don't have much. It's just the German business IFO climate. We also had speech from ECB's Villeroy. we should come out of inflation and come back towards the 2% target by 2025 while avoiding recession, basically showing that the ECB may take longer to get the inflation back to target. So knowing that, now looking at the charts, there's quite a number of things that we need to get ahead with. So first things first, after the big news last week that led to an acceleration of the dollar index traded sideways on Thursday and Friday, and today being Monday, you can see the kind of flag that is being formed on this chart. So if you tend to think of this big momentum as the flagpole, then it's easy to understand that the market has majorly been trading in this pattern that almost looks like a triangle. So it's some form of consolidation. So the dollar is not taking a strong stand, definitively moving strongly higher or strongly lower. So it's more of a consolidating market. So going ahead for the day, you can see that the market is basically heading for this area here. And then on the lower side, this is what we are looking at. Movement between the low on Friday, and of course, we have the low on Thursday. So today, after the market opened with a gap downwards, it immediately covered the gap and continued moving higher, which basically means that on the early trading hours, we have seen a stronger dollar, and this is also reflected in other currencies. So for pound USD, despite strongly attempting to bounce from this area, kept going downwards on Friday, and then today it seems to get even more downward pressure from the US dollar, which is currently very strong. So we are seeing a very strong break below this particular trend line, and this could be expected to continue for some time, but then we don't have any key data driving the markets today. So from what we are seeing here, from a smaller time frame, the pound USD is literally just ranging. So what we have here is a ranging market, a market that is just moving sideways. And of course, we know that you don't get a lot of opportunities trading a ranging market. You want to trade on the break. So if the market happens to break towards the upper side, then that's where you're looking to capture a bull trade. And of course, if the market is breaking towards the lower side, then that's where you're looking to catch a bearish trade. So for now, from the 15 minutes chart, this is what we are looking at in the pound USD currency pair. So in this case, we basically wait for a break. So as for USDJPY, you can see there was a very strong momentum on Friday. Today we opened with a gap downwards, gap was covered, and the market is pushing further upwards. So we are on the verge of breaking our previous high, and this is very important for any trader out there. So from the highest price that we saw on Thursday, Friday we were not able to break that, but right now the market is currently testing that high. So if we happen to break that area, then there's more room for upside. So we haven't seen that price level again in a while. So the last time the price was here was on November last year. So we are on the verge of completing this pattern where the market makes a U-shaped pullback. So in this case, the target remains the last year's high of 151.914. Considering the wide divergence between the Bank of Japan policy and the US Federal Reserve Bank policy. So on one hand, we have seen the Bank of Japan maintaining interest rates at the same level, negative 0.1%, whereas the US has been hiking interest rates, but then they paused in the last two sessions, but hopefully on the next one, they will be looking to make another rate hike. So for now, there's still more room for USDJPY to rally all the way up to 151.914. So from the one hour chart, it seems likely that once we break here, there could be some good acceleration above this area, and it would present a nice buying opportunity. So on the contrary, if the market is unable to break here, then we could be looking at a retest of the 147.816 price level, which acted as a very strong resistance area for the last couple of weeks. So in this case, if the market was to pull back downwards, then there's a likelihood it would touch 147.816. But then a clear break, we move higher. So it's the same case for Euro USD. Quite a number of attempts that this market has been attempting to bounce off the 1.0635 price level. So you can see the number of attempts that this market has been attempting to bounce from here and head upwards. But then every attempt has been met with more selling pressure. So it remains a key price level for the day. So if the market happens to break this successfully, then we trade downwards. But then personally, I'm biased towards the upper side. So if the market fails to break this area again, then potentially we could get a trade upwards and continue trading within this range. So clearly, you can see that this is a ranging market for the last 3 days, 2.5 days, I would say. So I would say that since we go to this area here, the overall price direction has been this one. So if we happen to see a clean break towards the lower side, then that would mean a short selling trade. But if the market bounces the same way it did on Friday, then we trade upwards. So for USD CAD, following the weakness of the oil prices, we saw the Canadian dollar take a backseat. So after the big acceleration downwards, the dollar came back strongly. Canadian dollar pushed back downwards, and then we had this clean break towards the upper side. Market went back, retested the trend line here, and then bounced. And now we can see that there is a pattern that is emerging. So the pattern is of this area here where we are seeing the market forming higher lows. So if you go to a smaller time frame, like the 15-minute chart, zoom out, then you identify this pattern right here. So market finding the bottom here, a second one, and a third. So potentially, we could be seeing the USD lose again to the Canadian dollar, and the market gets to this area here. But then, on the contrary, we also have this other high that we saw on Friday. So this was the Friday's high, and of course, the close on Thursday. So the market has tested this twice already for the day and was unable to break. So in this case, if the market decides to continue pushing back downwards, then this is the area to be looking for. And this is around, just want to check the right price level. This is around 1.34395. So also we could be seeing the market cruising through this area. And if there's a break of Friday's high, then Thursday's high becomes a target, which is 1.35224. So any break above this area will basically lead to this particular resistance point. So as for gold, we saw the big momentum downwards, but then the 1917 price level managed to hold well as expected. The market made a recovery on Friday, and then today you can see it's not making much of a momentum. So there was an attempt to pump gold higher, which was met with more selling pressure. So the expectation is that if the dollar continues being strong for the day, then a retest of 1917 and potentially the low of last week, 1914, would be a nice target, especially if the market closes downwards here. So if you go to the 1 hour chart, this is how it looks like. And if you zoom in, you can see the strong red candlestick with a long tail towards the upper side, indicating a rejection of higher prices, which implies we could be seeing some further downside pressure in gold. So AUD-USD seems to have made a good rally on Thursday and Friday towards this high here. So once we go to 0.64615, it was a nice exit point and the market lost momentum. So now it's headed back downwards. And of course, the immediate target is on Friday's low, which is 0.64028. So as for US equity indices, we are looking at 3 particular majors or major indices. So US Tech 100 or the NASDAQ made a big sell-off on Friday, Thursday, and Wednesday, cooled down on Friday, and now we are beginning a new week, knowing that the market is now headed lower after forming these consecutive highs that are significantly lower than each other, indicating that the market could now be headed further downwards. So for the NASDAQ, I expect some further downside momentum. So the market may struggle around the current price level, but the overall direction is that the market is headed to the previous low, which is around 14,553. So as for the US 500, I expect a similar price action. So from the forward chart, we have already broken this particular support. So if I were to zoom out and then we check this out, you'll notice the strong support that has been present in this area here. So the market managed to break this area, went back and retested, and now it's moving further back downwards. So I expect this momentum to continue downwards. since it's the first time we are seeing a market correction. So from this point, going forward for the day, it's also important to notice that there is this area here is acting as a support. So it was a resistance here, and now it's holding up as a support. So if the market was to break this area, we would have to work with another price level. So there's quite a number of price levels on this area here. So I would say a little bit lower. We have had the most recent high here. So this is the most recent high. So if the market was to close below this area, then potentially it could be getting to 4,196 price level. So for the US30 or the Dow Jones, it's also strongly bearish, especially after breaking this pattern. So I remember drawing this pattern with you guys last week, and the market eventually broke here. On Thursday, Friday kept going down, and then as you can see, day being Monday, there has been an attempt to move upwards, but from the current hour, it suggests that there's more bears coming into this market, and we could be experiencing some further downside momentum in price as we head into the day. So Brent oil has been facing a couple of challenges after hitting this high. So this was the highest price that we saw last week, $94.886 per barrel. So after hitting here, you can see the pullback that we have continued to experience. So if you go to a smaller time frame, in this case, the 15 minutes chart, then you can easily identify that this market is under a consolidation. So the most important thing for a technical trader is to be prepared. So all you have to do is to map the consolidation out and then identify what happens after the consolidation. Sorry for that. This is the consolidation here. So for 2 days straight, oil prices have not been moving up or down. They have just been trading between these two trend lines. So moving up and then down, up, down, up, down. And this is the current price level, which basically suggests that the market is currently on an upswing from the lower trend line to the upper trend line. So potentially getting to around $93.35 per barrel. And then we observe for the break. So the break will be the most important decision point when it comes to trading Brent oil, since it will give us a direction to take. So European indices had a big sell-off last week, moved sideways on Friday, and now what we are seeing with the French 40 index, nothing much is happening here. So if you consider that as the upper side and these as the lower side, sorry for that, then we can say that for the last, I would say 1.5 days, the French 40 index hasn't been moving much. So it's also in a consolidation where you need to observe for the break. Of course, for the Euro 50 index, is trading on a major support level on the forward chart. On the 1 hour chart, you can see the multiple times that the Euro 50 cash index has found support along this area here. And now there's that potential that the market could bounce off strongly. So we don't have evidence of that. So the market is seemingly looking to retest the area again. So on a 15 minutes chart, it's a sideways momentum. So you basically monitor this resistance and this support to observe for a potential break. So for the UK 100, after the strong rally last week, we saw the market moving sideways. So another rally happened here on Wednesday, Thursday pullback, Friday upwards. And now it's important now to monitor this particular trend line for a potential break. Of course, on the lower side, we know that the support is at 76.35. So it will be very interesting to trade this week, especially if the FTSE 100 manages to break either of these two trend lines. So that's it for the day. I'll be checking to see if you guys have any questions. I'll respond to the questions before we approach the end of the presentation. So hey, Patricia and Nancy, you can see Nelly in the house, Arax, Martin and Carol. Hi, Lucky and Francis. On oil, what to expect? It's a consolidation, but overall, we're expecting some further upside. There's two forces currently influencing the price of oil, which is basically demand and supply. And on the supply side, we know that the OPEC countries, Saudi Arabia, Russia, have all been cutting their output. But then we are seeing manufacturing recovering across different parts of the global economy, which basically creates higher demand for oil. And of course, consider that we are heading for winter, which creates higher demand for oil as well as gas. So the overall result is that oil prices are expected to move higher. So that basically implies that even though we have a consolidation right now, it's very important to monitor for a potential break that could happen on the upper side. So even if we have this, a potential break here would be a nice entry opportunity to capitalize on further upside in oil prices. So this pullback was not that big, which basically implies we could be seeing some further upside this week. India-Canada tensions, could that affect the Canadian dollar? Yes, I saw that over the weekend. Canadian Prime Minister Justin Trudeau basically pulled back on the tension, said he didn't know anything about it, but then we'll be seeing more development today. So I don't have an angle yet on how it affects the market. Any fundamentals from Russia and China that might affect oil price? No, not yet. I think the best that Russia has done for the oil market is reduce its oil output and of course banning its exports to Europe, which basically means that there's less and less supply of oil in the market, which basically drives prices higher. Expectations from Bank of England. From the Bank of England, we know that even though they decided to hold interest rates steady, they still quite a challenge with their inflation problem. So with inflation being currently on the rise, the Bank of England might have to be a little bit more aggressive in order for them to strengthen the the UK pound, and of course, narrow down on the current inflation problem. So far, investors are basically questioning the commitment of the Bank of England because they had the opportunity to level interest rates with the US, but they did not take it. So from the vote, we saw a divided panel where 4 members were voting on a rate hike and 5 members were voting on a rate pause. So the majority won. But then going into the next meeting, there's a good chance that one of the members will flip, and then the votes will be on the side of the hiking interest rates. So while the dollar is currently very strong, it has really gained against the UK pound. But then at some point, the dollar will have to take a step back. And in that case, we'll see the pound beginning to recover. How do you set up the day separator in the MT5? If you're using a Windows device, it's Control+Y. Control+Y. But then a more manual way to do it is to go to right click, go to properties of your chart, show, and then show period separators. That's the longer way to do it. Then if you can do Control+Y, then you're good. When do you think the rally of dollar yen will end? It will only end when the Bank of Japan decides to intervene in the currency market. So by intervening, it basically means that it sells its US bonds, gets dollars, and then uses those dollars to buy more Japanese yen out of the market, which would strengthen the yen. So it happened sometimes last year. So if you look at the USD yen, where is that? Go to the daily. I think we have a clean break. I think this is a clean break. It could be the trade for the day. This clean break would literally imply that we go for some further upside. So if the market manages to hold these levels, then there's a good chance we'll be seeing some further upside. So this USDN, so if you go to the daily and then you zoom out, you'll notice that this was the previous high. So there's a good chance we'll be seeing some further upside all the way to 151.914. Any news on the USDJPY pair? Yes, kindly follow up on the speech that was released early in the morning at around 8 a.m. by the Bank of Japan chairperson, Kazuo Ueda. So that's it for the day. Thank you very much, everyone. And I hope to see you on the next session, which will be happening tomorrow at the same exact time at 11 a.m. Also consider subscribing to the channel so that whenever there's a new session going on, you get notified. So enjoy the rest of your trading day. Remember, today is a price action traders territory. And I think personally, there's a good opportunity that will be playing out in USDJPY for the day.